What's up, y'all? This is PSC Kyle on World Discussions, back in effect. I'm here to talk about anything on here, on air, for your ears to hear. Today we're going to talk about the opioid crisis and how to do proper research and to figure out what's really going on in this world and how they mislead and misbrand and how they try to get you hooked on the things that you just have no proper knowledge or proper research done to understand what's really going on. So first and foremost, I want to say that I'm not no doctor. I'm not a physician. I'm just a normal person. I'm not a physics instructor or nothing like that. I'm just a normal person that's reading this information from the government documents and court cases for help, just like you. This video is ultimately to help people understand where they can get proper information from and how they can dissect proper information so they can understand what's being fed to them as well as their community. Also, this video is not intended for arguments or anything else to divide us. You know how the conscious community likes to get, their little debates. This ain't nothing to ultimately divide anybody. This is more so feeding you guys information so you guys can understand how to find proper knowledge. That's it. So we can combat whatever's going on in this world as of now. So with that being said, let's get it. So opioid crisis is it's getting crazy right now. Like a lot of people are starting to die. Not starting, a lot of people are dying. A lot of money is being spent, and it's not going towards the alternatives for the opium. So all the documents that I'm going to read today are all documents given either by the government, by the government's court cases, by different sects of the government like the the FDA and the United States Department of Health and Human Services, stuff like that. This is all governmental documents and stuff that we can read, the public can read on the internet. PDFs, books, local libraries, this is all stuff that we can get in our hands. It's present to us on the internet. So that's basically ultimately what this video is about. To start this off, I want to identify what the opium crisis is and what opium is, or poppy plant, whatever they want to call it. According to the American Society of Addiction Medicine, opium or opioids are a class of drugs that include the illicit drug heroin as well as the illicit prescription pain relievers oxycodone, hydrocodone, codeine, morphine, fentanyl, and others. Opioids are chemically related and interact with opioid receptors on nerve cells in the brain and nervous system to produce pleasurable effects and relieve pain. According to the government, in the mid to late 19th century, the first national opioid crisis occurred. During this time, opioid use rose dramatically and fueled by physicians' unrestrained opioid prescription for pain or other ailments and by liberal use of opioid-based treatments for injuries and disease impacting Civil War combatants and veterans. So it was ultimately designed and created so you can relieve pain. These pills were ultimately designed, and it was created to help our nervous system produce pleasurable effects to help those that are undergoing pain. Now that on the surface it seems cool, and we're not taking anything away from the painkillers because they do work, but the back end of the back end, like Lil Baby and gonna say, the back end is what we're not doing our proper research on. And that's where we go wrong. So the government, just listen, the government has approved the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, Purdue Pharma, the misleading company that we'll talk about in the future, and the other pharmaceutical companies that have access to opioids. These companies are getting licensed, and the physicians they're all going through with this stuff. Like, this is all approved by the government. You can't sell this stuff without the government knowing about it, unless you're doing it illegally. So, pharmaceutical companies that have access to these opioids. You cannot have access to these drugs without having a license to sell to the public unless you have a foreign distributor, in other words, an illegal smuggler. From different countries, China and Mexico, poppy plants. That's where they're getting this stuff from, and they're extracting it from the plants and bringing it here to help the Americans with their pain, back pain, toothache, chronic migraine, all that type of stuff. You cannot have access to these drugs without a license. The FDA approved of the marketing of OxyContin done in 1996, the same drug that has links to codeine, Vicodin, Percocets, and many other stuff that we all know as painkillers, which are less potent forms of heroin and fentanyl, which are the things that are killing people right now. But they're still addictive, and if taken without proper knowledge of the effects, they can become very dangerous. See, this is the information that people are skimming by. This is the information that people aren't understanding, and they're not doing their research on. You don't just listen to a physician or a doctor that's telling you, you're going to need this, this, and that. Yeah, it may help, but who's worrying about the stuff that's coming, the side effects in the back end of the back end that's happening when you're addicted to it or when you just cannot function without it? It's not like any other little marijuana, a little street drug, a little smart. No, this is some high-end stuff we're working on. Purdue Pharma was not informing the public of the after effects of the misuse of these drugs, but it is a very dangerous drug according to the government. A brother of mine, this is what I really want to instill into everybody's head for this video. Because a brother of mine, Isaiah Tilson from the First Amendment podcast, stated, opioids are changing the chemistry of our minds. You see, when these pharmaceutical companies market these drugs, they're not telling us about the back end side effects that are chemically altering the chemistry of our normal or natural bodies. This is the stuff that we got to start researching on. Ultimately, it's making us dependent upon them, just like any other drug over the counter or on the streets. You like smoking weed, sativa, indica, you just love rolling up. You roll up 6, 7 L's a day. I know people like that. You roll all the bunch of L's a day. That's because you just want to roll up. Yeah, it's cool. Let's roll up. You're not addicted, but you just, I need to catch that feeling again. I just got to keep catching. I just got, this is all going through in your head. But this is the same exact idea that's going on with this over-the-counter drugs that you're doing. You love smoking weed. You feel like you try and roll up just one more L. Well, this is the same as the drugs that these pharmaceutical companies are prescribing you. And when you keep getting more and more of that drug, you're going further and further down the rabbit hole of chemical dependency. This over time creates an addiction. They don't tell you that part of the prescription because that's the catch. That's how you become dependent upon them. This is where I'm getting at, because you do your proper research that's there for you that they didn't really have in the 90s, and it's here now. Then you can see. Then you'll start seeing different stuff that the government, not even the government, just these little pharmaceutical companies and these physicians are actually giving you. So you can understand, okay, he wants to give me this, this, and that. Well, let's find an alternative to this, this, and that, because these narcotics, you're becoming addicted to them. It's not, listen, below are the opioid epidemic statistics taken from the studies done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for the 2016 year. 116 people died from opioid-related overdoses each day. Now, let's do that research, because people are just looking at numbers and thinking, okay, statistics, this is all making sense. 116 times 365, you mean years in a day, days in a year, that's 42,000 people. That means 42,000 people were misled. Somebody ain't giving y'all the right information. Over 42,000 people died from opioid overdoses over the course of the year. 1 million people had an opioid disorder. Now, when you guys are seeing all this stuff and it's being marketed to you, what do you think? 17,000 people died and were caused by overdoses on commonly prescribed opioids. Now, when I start getting into what Purdue Pharma was doing, you guys are going to go back to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and be like, well, that doesn't make sense to what they was talking about. These are two different stories. 19,000 deaths resulted from use of other synthetic opioids other than methadone. 15,469 deaths were attributed to heroin overdose. Come on now. When you can't continue to pay for these painkillers over the counter, but your body is dependent upon it. Some run to street drugs some run to street drugs to cover that dependency, and that's where they skydive into the rabbit hole of chemical dependency, which results in addiction. And Nobody understands that part of it. They just want to skim through the information and let the marketing do all the talking for them and all the thinking for them. That's not what we're going to do now these days. Because when we got everybody thinking for us, we got 116 people dying every day, and that ain't it. In 19, look, and listen to what I'm saying right here. In 1999, the Purdue Frederick Company Incorporated, Purdue, has pleaded guilty to misbranding OxyContin, a prescription opioid pain medication, with the intent to defraud or mislead, a felony under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in the case that was held in the West District of Virginia. So this is back in the day, like I was what, 2, 3 years old, and they're misleading people like this. They even got commercial. According to Purdue, this is what they said in court. Sales representatives, they could tell healthcare providers that OxyContin potentially creates less chance for addiction than immediate release opioids. Now, if you believe that, you obviously didn't listen to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for the year 2016. You didn't. You didn't listen to anything. This is all the stuff that the government is giving us in document form PDFs online. This ain't nothing I'm just pulling out my hat. Like, this is something you can read. There has been a large jump in sales from 2007 to 2012, coincidentally after Purdue Pharma pleaded guilty to the deceptive marketing of opioids, ultimately for money, years before. If you're marketing this stuff and you're telling people it's not going to do this, this, and that, it will only do that, you're not even worrying about the health no more. This seems like it's about the money. Everyone experiences pain, so everyone's going to contact their local doctors to guide them in the right direction. But the doctors don't even know what's going on. The doctors are just giving it to us and just trying to get us out the office. The crackdown on these pain pills led many people addicted to these drugs to cross over to heroin and fentanyl, which are far more potent than the over-the-counter drugs that FDA are approving, and they're illegal. Do you not see the loopholes and the catch that you're getting caught up in, the hook? According to the United States Department of Health and Human Services, $1 billion is being used to crack down on this epidemic. Even the CDC has released alternatives to this epidemic and ways in which we could prevent the abuse and overdose of these drugs. So now you got people marketing that these drugs will do this, this, and that, to the point where you then killed 1 million people so that the CDC and all the other government officials got to step in because you're not doing the right work. Be aware of what you live, where you live too. Where you live is definitely affected, because even though this happened in Virginia, I can go to Kensington and Philly right now and see all the addicts walking on the street, and they all got a story. Beware where you live, because certain states in America are being funded more so than others, and the government has ties to funding the same companies that have people seemingly marketing these things to you. Now, you can see this on YouTube. You can go do your research on Google. Listen to what I'm about to say right here. In the Purdue Pharma commercial, the commercial for Purdue Pharma, the actor says, "Do not be afraid to take what they give you." This is verbatim. Do not be afraid to take what they give you. Often it would be an opioid medication. Some patients may be afraid of taking opioids because they're perceived as too strong or addicted. But that is far from factual. That is far from actual fact. How is that far from the actual fact? When I read the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 116 people dying, that don't sound like it's not too strong. That sounds like we're dealing with something that's not even supposed to. Nah. Listen, this look, with the text on the video stating less than 1% of patients become addicted. Will you tell that to the 1 million people that done died over the years? Because it seemed like they have been addicted, and evidence right here. It's right here. Over 42,000 people died from opioid overdose over the course of the year. So what are they telling y'all? Oxycodone, what they created, OxyContin is putting oxycodone as well. Do your research. This is a complete lie according to the statistics done by the people that I just read from. You got athletes. Hold on, because it's about to cut off. And yeah, we going back in before they tried to cut us off from this proper information. So like I was saying, you have athletic children that go through injuries during sports and feel as though they should trust their doctors because, well, they're doctors, and take the proper dosage they are told to take, and eventually get addicted to these drugs and either overdose or find street drugs that are cheaper like fentanyl and heroin. The overdose deaths in non-urban areas are driven by the increase of opioid addiction in the U.S. So you got even high school kids that just want to play sports, want to play basketball, want to play football, lacrosse, soccer, water polo. They want to get athletic. They hurt themselves, they tear their ACL, concussion, they break a bone. They go to their doctor to have them lead them the right way. But their doctors they aren't even being led the right way because the market is telling them to give this to the, and then they give it to the kid, and the kid don't know that the doctor, it's not working. In 2 weeks it ain't working right. It ain't helping the pain, so they need more and more and more. And eventually, by the end of the month or the end of the year, you done gave them 100 different pills, and now they dependent upon you. And when they're not on the pills, the pain is excruciating. Now they gotta find different ways to get it because it may be too much, or maybe the community can't afford it, or maybe the physicians just keep giving it to them, not knowing the genetic makeup of this kid cannot withstand all this stuff that they're giving them. And these same companies play with the terminology. Look, not even. I'm going too fast, but when you have the same government that helps prevent these epidemics also helping to fuel them, I know that this epidemic is not just to help people with pain relief, it's more like a financial gain. These same companies play with the terminology of these drugs as well. Oxycodone sounds a bit like codeine, but oxycodone, which actually has Oxycontin in it, is about 50% more potent than morphine, which is a serious opioid because oxycodone is a chemical that is present in Oxycontin. This is the stuff that they presented to us in 96. They had a commercial in 96. This is Purdue Pharma making millions, $1 billion off of this stuff. According to June Dahl, PhD, stronger than morphine opioids include fentanyl, hydromorphone, methadone, oxycodone, oxymorphone. According to the Washington Post, oxycodone, the opioid, and Oxycontin, Percocets, and uh, Percodan, or as well as other medicines, is about 50% stronger than morphine. You mean to tell me I tore my ACL and you gonna give me something 50% stronger than morphine? They are frequently prescribed for intense pain after surgery or other medical procedures and are used at higher doses for long-term intractable cancer pain. I tore my ACL. Do I look like I got cancer? Y'all giving me this stuff? Yo, this multi-billion-dollar idea stems from the offshoot of OxyContin's effectiveness now being presented to those who experience pain in any form. Menstrual pain, back pain, chronic migraines, toothaches, all this type of stuff. Listen, if the doctors don't know what to do when you're feeling excruciating pain and you come in the office talking about this, and that, and they just want to get you out the office because him, and her feel the same pain, here, just take these pills real quick and keep it pushing. That's not how we need alternatives, man. That's why I was at work and I'm sitting here writing on napkins alternatives, just something we can think about instead of these narcotics that they're pushing in our face that we're becoming chemically dependent on. So instead of Oxycontin's being a drug that could help those with veterans and cancer patients, these industries decide why not use the same drug to sell to doctors and patients and mislead them with the idea in mind that this will reduce the effective pain. It may, however, this was in fact misleading information, hence why everyone and the victims are now looking to other drugs to cope with the pain that they thought pharmaceutical companies were helping them with because these drugs are very addictive. I want you, all the names that I'm saying, codone, Percocets, Oxycontin, all this stuff, morphine, do your research on this stuff, man. This stuff is not nothing to play with, man. I swear to gosh. Look, according to ABC, Dr. Howard Diamond, a certified and licensed doctor, contributed to 7 overdose deaths and pleaded guilty to all charges. He worked with thousands of patients in a 5-year gap, so and so by his attorney. Longer practices, and he no longer practices anymore. Some physicians just may not know what these addictive opioids are doing. You got these companies marketing these opioids, telling these physicians to give it to the patients, and the physicians don't even know what they're doing. You got people that went to school for 5, 6 years, don't even know what they're giving to their patients. Now they got to stop practicing because they killing people. Yeah, over 240 million prescriptions are written each year for opioid pain-related medications, enough for every adult American to have their own share. Y'all not reading in between the lines? These drugs can literally hijack the brain, and before you know it, you are hooked and no longer the same person. So that's why when you go to well, for me, that's why when I go to Kensington and I do the teach one, feed one, shout out to my man, I do the teach one, feed one thing every other Sunday and stuff like that. You can see these addicts on the streets. they're dependent upon these chemicals because once they get off of these chemicals, their body becomes sick just like any other drug. Their body becomes, oh, I need it. My body doesn't even understand how to naturally do it on its own. All it knows is chemicals. Many of the deaths are from extremely potent opioids like fentanyl or carfentanil. Carfentanil is used to tranquilize elephants and large mammals. That's not for humans. That was not tested on humans, but we got people taking that because it's over the counter is probably either too expensive or it's not working. And why is it not working? Because y'all not looking at the people's genetics and figuring out, okay, maybe we don't need to give them this much because their body can probably handle a little bit more so than what the chemicals are doing to them. It may seem like it's helping them out. Give it 2, 3, 4 months, maybe a year. They're going to be like, they're not even going to be the same person. Their brain is hijacked. You got people not even thinking the same way. Like, about what does it say? Epidemics has cost the United States hundreds of billions of dollars, about $504 billion in 2015. Till this day, the FDA still approves new opioids to the public despite the epidemic we're already dealing with. We don't need more of what we're trying to rid ourselves of. The new opioid is called Suvia with a D. That's the problem right there. And this is from my words. We need to do more research, more effective ways and alternatives to these narcotics. With the insurance companies, we need to antagonize them. Antagonize everybody. Companies that cover physical therapy, massage therapy, other effective modes of treating pain, or whether just prescribing the narcotics and just give us the same stuff. And the doctors in the rooms and the next patient, they're just going to keep giving us the same stuff. So I wrote down just some small alternative stuff that we can even just do our research on it. Just try to figure out what's actually going on. Like, so I figured maybe we can tap into the genetics of specific patients. Maybe figure out maybe this much of the prescribed painkiller is too much for this person's genetic makeup. Maybe their body just can't take this much. Give them proper dosages. This is not something that you just need to give it to them just to get them out the office. We need to figure out what they need to properly take in order for them to weed out the pain that they're getting or something. Also, safer, less addictive opioids. If you guys are going to keep making these opioids, stop making it 50% more addictive and more potent than morphine. Like, y'all, do y'all not understand the problem? Like, is that what's going on right now? Not even the physicians know what's going on. We got people, doctors' offices testing this stuff, and they're not going to the main point. The fact that it's addictive and it's killing these communities and killing people, and y'all not, come on, man. Hypnosis treatment. Yeah, that's the thing. Hypnosis treatment and massage therapy. These are all little alternatives aside from narcotics. We don't always gotta resort to, okay, well, if this is not working, this is not working, the knee is still hurt, the toothache is still excruciating, just give them the narcotics and maybe that'll get them out the office. We need to stop trying to get these people out the office. We need to keep them in the office until these people feel as though I don't need to be here anymore. I don't feel chemically dependent upon you guys. I feel as though my body can fend for itself, and I'm about on my way now. So that's just where I wanted to go with this information. I want to give big thanks to Isaiah Tilson from the First Amendment podcast for showing love, introducing me to the proper way of finding out information to help the communities and help so we don't keep continuing to get divided by chemicals. We're being divided by chemicals now, if you didn't know. So I just wanted to say thanks for listening. Remember, all this information is given to the public by the government for our knowledge and understanding of this issue. Please take the time to do your research about this stuff because it's creeping into our neighborhoods uninvited. Hopefully you guys learned something. I'm PSC Kyle, and thanks for watching. Amen.